Alright, what's up everybody? Kozak back here. Sorry, it's been a while. I've been busy teaching. So one of the things that I've been teaching a lot lately, and I'm kind of sick of saying, is how to write a freaking essay. So I decided to make a YouTube video on it because then I never have to say it again. I can just hit play and fall asleep in the back of class. Nice. One note before I get started on this. So, there is no consensus among English teachers on how to write an essay. We all use different words differently. We all have different criteria. We're all looking for different things. We all have different expectations on language and format and whatever. Basically, it's a giant freaking mess, and your English teachers should sort themselves out. Anyway. So the caveat to all this is, everything I teach you might be wrong if your English teacher disagrees with me. I don't know, show them my video and let them grade it. And then you can know if you do this well what kind of grade you get. I don't know. So just be aware that everything I tell you is not doctrine, it's basically my interpretation. Now if you're in my class, I value one thing way above everything else. And I would say I actually value it above most English teachers too. And that is your depth. How deeply did you understand your topic? How deeply did you express your topic? And that's quite difficult to understand, and that's quite difficult to do. And I value that even above how well you say it. So if you say something really deep, but it's spelled like an orangutan threw its face against the keyboard, well then, you're still probably going to get an okay grade in my class, whereas in a different class you'd probably fail miserably. That being said, if you say something beautifully, but it's basically a hollow, empty, nonsense piece of garbage, then you're probably going to get a bad grade in my class, whereas in a different English teacher's class, you'd probably get a good grade. Alright, so now that that is all out of the way, we can get started. Alright guys, so basically the way this is going to kind of work is, I'm going to show you how to write the most basic possible essay. So this is like roughly grade 10 level, maybe grade 9 level essay writing. If you're above that, I think you could probably pick up a few things anyway. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to show you 5 boxes. Each of these boxes represent a paragraph, or in some cases more. This is your basic 5-paragraph essay. Now, once you get into university, if you hand in a 5-paragraph essay, you're going to get laughed at and probably slapped in the face, but it's a good place to get started. So the very first thing you need to be able to do to write a good essay is to be able to write a good thesis. And I mean both the thesis statement and a thesis paragraph, or called an introductory paragraph. If you can't do this, probably the essay is not going to be great. And this is also the hardest paragraph to write, in my opinion. Once you write this paragraph, the rest of the essay is really easy. Well, not really easy, but it's easier. After you write this paragraph, you get 1, 2, 3 body paragraphs. I'll talk about those in just a second. And once you've got your 3 body paragraphs or more, 3 is the minimum, by the way. Like minimum. Once you have those 3 body paragraphs or more, so each one of these beautiful little boxes represents a paragraph. So it should look something like this. Now note, hold on, can I move myself up here? Alright, this is going to be very awkward. Come on a journey with me. Nice. Alright, so you'll note that, whoop, there we go, this paragraph and this paragraph are both smaller than the other 3. The reason for that is they actually tend to be smaller paragraphs. So a lot of students ask me on the first day of writing an essay, or the second day, or the third day after they've wasted 3 days, Kozak, my first paragraph's only like 4 sentences long, so is that bad? And I'm like, nah, it's fine, because that's not the most important part of the essay. It is the most important part, but it's also not. The first and last paragraph are probably going to be a lot shorter than your body paragraphs, and if they're longer, you've probably got a problem. So we're going to start here. We're going to start in the first paragraph, obviously. So let's get rid of all this other crap, and let's focus only on the first paragraph. So I'm not going to talk about any of the other 3 paragraphs for about, I don't know, however long it takes me to get through this. So, the intro paragraph. Now, the intro paragraph is comprised of 3 things. So within this paragraph, there are 1, 2, 3 steps. Basically, what this paragraph does is it sets up your following 3 paragraphs. So whatever you're going to say in the following 3 paragraphs, you need to make reference to it in your first paragraph. This has an implication that your essay needs to be planned before you write it. You can't write the first paragraph about the next 3 paragraphs if you don't already know what you're going to say. I promise you that if you write this essay and just start writing, with no idea what you're going to say, and you're like, you've all done this. You've all done this. You just start doing this. Uh-oh. We're back. I promise you, if you just start writing like that, it's going to end up all over the place. You're going to start here, and you're going to end up way over here. And I can tell right away, because what happens is, what you say in your first paragraph, you say, I'm going to argue this. And then in your last paragraph, you're talking about something completely different. Because basically, you formed your essay by writing it, and that ends up as a disaster. Even my supremely talented students lose marks on this. I have A students that get B's and sometimes even C's on their essays because they think they can just fire one out. Doesn't work like that, so plan it out. As a result of all of this, your first paragraph is usually the hardest to write. Even though it's the smallest, it often takes a substantial amount of time. Usually the first 2 days, students are writing the first paragraph. It's only 4 sentences long. And you think, well, how the hell can it take you 2 days to write 4 sentences? Well, basically, it's because they have to plan the whole essay out first. So, you need to know what you're going to say beforehand. All right, let's get to it. So those 3 steps I mentioned earlier are this. Number 1, you need to write a thesis statement. Number 2, you need a summary of arguments. And number 3, you need a concluding sentence. Once you have those 3 things, your introductory paragraph is done. And you think, okay, well, 3 steps, how hard can it possibly be? Well, the first one's pretty hard, second one's extremely challenging, and the third one, well, the third one is actually easy. Okay? So let's start with number 1, the thesis statement. So the thesis statement is just the main idea of the whole essay. Basically, if you had to summarize your entire essay in 1 sentence, it would be your thesis statement. Or think of it this way. Let's say you had to write a final exam on an essay, and you totally forgot about the exam, you didn't do any studying because you're all idiots, and on the way to class you remember, oh, I have a final exam today and it's on this essay. You pull it out of your bag and you read the thesis statement. Theoretically, that's enough for you to be able to pass the final exam because it's basically the whole essay condensed into 1, maybe 2 sentences, although typically 1. Your thesis statements need to accomplish that. If I don't feel like marking your essay and I just want to give you a grade based on your thesis statement because that's how I mark, then I want to be able to do that. So write a good thesis statement or you're going to get like a C- on your essay, man. So if you think of a topic sentence for a paragraph, a thesis statement is to an essay what a topic sentence is to a paragraph. It's like, not all, sometimes it's the first line. I think in the example I give later on, it's the last line, which is more common, but I don't particularly care. And it basically just tells you, here's what's coming, man. And obviously it's found in the introduction. I've said that like 3 times already. Why is this even on here? Now here's a fairly critical point, and I'm in the way of it, so I'm going to move myself. If I read your thesis statement and I have no idea what you're about to argue, big problem. So if I read your thesis statement, I'm like, your essay can't possibly be any good. Well, maybe it can, I don't know. Probably not. So let me give you an example of a thesis statement. Now, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I fired this sucker out real quick, and she ain't a beauty, but she'll do for now. Let's imagine that that essay topic is this. Are humans good or evil? Well, let's come up with a thesis statement about that. Now, not always, but most of the time, if your teacher gives you some kind of a prompt, the best way to respond to it, at least, maybe not the best way to respond to it, but certainly the best way to get a good grade in most English classes is just to rephrase the question or prompt as a thesis statement. So here we have a question. Are human beings good? I'm just going to play with the phrasing a little bit and come up with a thesis statement. So my thesis statement is, human beings are innately evil. And you might think, okay, sweet, done. Well, it's not quite done, but it's good enough for now. That's my thesis idea, but I'm not going to use that exact wording when I write my essay. But basically, if I hand you my essay and said, this essay is about how human beings are innately evil, you could be like, okay, sweet, done. Read the essay. B+, Kozak. Woo! All right, so we're back to this screen. We have completed our thesis statement, right? So that's done. So let's check that off. The next thing we have to do is we have to come up with a summary of arguments, which is basically you telling the reader, here's what my thesis is, and it's true or false for this, this, and this reason. So that's why I said you need to have your essay planned out early before you actually start writing it, because you can't summarize arguments you haven't made yet. I mean, I guess you could say, well, I'll write the arguments first and then I'll write the thesis later. Well, that's just going to be a disaster. It's going to be a mess. So what are Kozak's summary of arguments for this essay? Okay, well, Now, just for the record, the reason that I picked this particular example is I actually do believe this. I actually do believe that humans are innately evil and not innately good. I also think that if you believe that humans are innately good, it's probably because you were born in a place where humans are innately good. Ask somebody from war-torn Sudan or Syria whether they think human beings are good or evil. Something to think about. Now, the reason I told you this is because it's always better, in my opinion, to write about something that you are either A, passionate about, or B, truly believe. Students always do better, and I can tell when they write about something they believe or are passionate about. It just sort of bleeds through into the essay, and there's like more quality of thought, and there's a certain element of passion there. So if I could give you some advice, write about something you actually believe, if you have the opportunity. So here I've picked human beings are innately evil because I believe that. So it was really easy for me to come up with arguments, and I'll tell you what those arguments are. This is usually a sentence, sometimes two. I guess you could make a sentence for each argument if you really wanted. I would say that in a high school essay, you never really need more than 3 main arguments. Like, you could write multiple paragraphs about each of those arguments, and that's fine, but I would say like more than 3 main arguments is probably overkill. And certainly if you have like 5 main arguments and they're each a paragraph, like, you're probably going to get a bad grade because you're not going in depth enough into each argument. My personal ideal essay in like grade 11 or 12 would be something like 2 paragraphs on each argument, something like that. So it would end up being 2 paragraphs in the first argument, 2 paragraphs in the second argument, 2 paragraphs on the third argument, and then intro and conclusion. 8. So in order to summarize my arguments, the question I need to ask myself is, how can I prove to people with facts or logic or whatever that human beings are innately evil? Okay, well, that's pretty easy. I've come up with 3 main arguments. Each of these will become a paragraph or 2. In my opinion, 2 is better, but 1 in grade 10 is probably enough. So my first argument is that societies need laws to function. Now, in the introductory paragraph, I wouldn't explain this any further. The explaining comes later on when we get to the paragraph. Now, since I'm not actually going to write the paragraph for you, let me explain to you guys what I mean by this. In every country, we need laws to tell us what to do. So, if human beings were innately good, why would we need laws? They would just do what is good. So the very fact that we actually need laws, to me, is evidence that human beings are actually innately evil. Because if we were all innately good, we would just go about doing good. But we require restrictions in society because we're innately evil. That's my argument. Now, I'm not going to make that argument here. I'm just going to reference it. I'm just going to say, we need laws as a society. They're going to be like, wait, what? And then I'm going to be like, wait! I'll get to that. My second argument is very similar to argument number 1, but a very different context. We train our children to be good. So, I'm a parent, I have 2 children, or monsters, or whatever you want to call them. I'm constantly reminding them, say please and thank you. Don't do that. Be nice to your sister, be nice to your brother, share. Like, we're constantly training our children to be good. I wouldn't need to tell my freaking son 10,000 times to say thank you if he were innately a good person. I have to train him to be good. If left to his own devices, he will become a terrorist. Maybe that was a bad joke. My third argument is very different from these 2, so it's always good to have like a variety in your arguments, right? So these 2 are pretty similar in their nature, but the third one is very different. So my third argument is hundreds of millions of deaths in the 20th century. Now, again, I'm not going to talk about this in depth here, but I will talk about it in the essay. And I'm specifically referring to the deaths resulting from political ideologies, specifically Nazism and communism. And I'm going to focus heavily on communism because it's something that I really disagree with. And we know that in China alone, 100 million people were killed in the name of communism. So that's my third argument. If human beings were innately good, we wouldn't mass murder one another in the name of politics or political ideologies, like, obviously. So these are my 3 main points as to why humans are evil. Now, again, let me emphasize, you don't go into any depth on these 3 things right here. You just kind of list them real quick. It's inferred by the reader that you're going to elaborate on those in the essay. So sometimes I see people will, like, you know, they'll have like 3 or 4 sentences on each of these, and then it's like their intro paragraph is like this big, right? So that's not good. So just wait, right? Be patient. We'll get to this. So just give me, you know, a quick summary. So this can be done literally in a sentence. I can just smash all these together. Now, for me, because 2 of these arguments are similar and one of them is different, I decided to combine the 2 that are similar into a single sentence, and the one that's different I have afterwards. So my summary of arguments in this case is 2 separate sentences. And I'll show you the example of that when we're done this. So the third thing is the easiest. Once you're done your summary of arguments, which, by the way, is by far the hardest part of writing the essay because you're basically planning out the essay here, you need a concluding sentence, and this part is easy, okay? The basic function of your concluding sentence is to let the reader know The paragraph is over, the essay is starting. The intro's done, here we go. So it kind of needs like a tone of finality to it. It should feel to the reader like, okay, done, here we go. Something like that. Now, it's actually not as hard as you might think to have that tone of finality, because I've actually got a list of words and phrases I'm going to show you in a second, where if you start your concluding paragraph with one of these, it's automatically given a tone of finality. So the list of these words is, and I'm just going to read them off the screen because I don't have them memorized. Therefore, as expressed, overall, as a result, thus. By the way, if you're in my class and you use the word thus correctly, not only will you get a certified high five from me, you'll get an additional mark, which counts for nothing because I don't accumulate grades, so it actually doesn't matter, but whatever. Finally, lastly, for this reason, and in general, here, I'll move out of the way here so you can take a screenshot or a picture of this. Whoop! There we go. So use any one of these phrases or words to start this sentence, and I guarantee you it'll have a tone of finality to it. So mission accomplished. So what do we do now? We had those three elements. So we had our thesis statement, we had our summary of argument, and our concluding sentence. You create those, and then you smash them all together into a paragraph. So that's what I've done here. So here is my introductory paragraph on the essay, Why Humans Are Innately Evil. While the debate over human nature has raged since the time of the first philosophers, the evidence in favor of human nature being malevolent is overwhelming. Human beings being... Wait, what? Human beings being? Who the hell wrote this? Human beings being innately good would imply that societies need not have laws to function properly, or that we need not educate our children to be good. Significantly more convincing to the basic nature of humans is the death toll as the result of political ideologies in the past 100 years. For these reasons, it can be proven out of hand that human nature is vindictive, murderous, and hostile. Got him! Woo! Alright, so this is like maybe a B+ or an A introductory statement in my class. I mean, it's not amazing, but I did throw it together in like literally 3 minutes, so just give me a break, okay? Do better. So let's break it apart really quick. So I told you that there were three main parts to an introductory paragraph. We have the thesis statement, the summary of arguments, and the conclusion. Now, it should be noted that some teachers want you to put the thesis at the end. I like having it at the beginning in grade 10 because it's basically a training wheels essay. But the thesis, as long as I know what your thesis is, I don't really care that much where it goes. So here we go. Where's the thesis statement? Well, here it is, right? Now, I've got a little bit of a hook going on here. I didn't mention hooks, by the way, because in grade 10, I tend not to teach them. They're just sort of like, they're nice, but they're not necessary. Let's get the basics done first. But a hook is just something like, you know, let's get the readers interested, because this is going to be a boring-ass essay, and we should probably make it a little bit more interesting. And the way that we do that is by putting something a little bit more interesting. So my hook is something about, you know, philosophers have been debating this forever, but I'm right and they're all wrong. Something like that, right? So here it is. This is my thesis statement. Okay, so after the thesis statement, we need the summary of arguments. So here's the summary of arguments. I told you that I was going to combine the first two arguments into a single sentence. Lo and behold, I did it because they're very similar. And my third argument is pretty different, so I put it into its own sentence, talking about political ideologies and the mass death toll and whatever else. Finally, I wanted to have a concluding sentence so that the reader knows there's, you know, an element of finality to it. So I chose the line, "For these reasons," to start it off, gives it that tone of finality. Like I said, reader knows that the thesis is over, and here we go. Now, notice that there's a little bit of a problem here, and I didn't do this intentionally, but I'm realizing it now. I'm a little bit repetitive. I basically said the same thing in my conclusion and in my thesis, so it's a little bit repetitive, and you have to be careful of that. It's really easy to do. And it's really easy to make your thesis and your concluding sentence almost identical, and it can sound really repetitive. Basically, don't say the same thing twice. Learn from me. Don't do what I did. Okay, nice. So there we have a pretty reasonable introductory paragraph. Done, right? Now, this one's the hardest to write. When you're done, and that feels good, man. So part number 2. So once you're done that first paragraph, it's pretty much smooth sailing, although this part takes a long time too. So remember that each of these boxes represents a paragraph. Now you'll note that I've changed it from paragraph 1 to argument 1, because that's basically what it is. Each paragraph contains an argument, although remember again, you can have multiple paragraphs on the same argument. So this is a 5-paragraph essay, which is like the bare freaking minimum you'll ever need to write in your life. If you're having a hard time writing a 5-paragraph essay and you like don't want to do it or you can't do it, don't go to university, man. It's going to be a disaster. Because I had to write a 40-freaking-page thesis paper, and it was like the worst experience of my life. So basically, each of your paragraphs, or each paragraph, is an argument, and each of these arguments needs to be linked back to your thesis when you make it. You don't just make the argument, and then at the very end of the essay, you're like, oh yeah, remember this was on human nature, ha! So Every time you make an argument, say, as a result of this, and remember, my essay's on whether human beings are good or evil. Every time you make an argument, you need to say, as a result of this, human beings are evil. So that was my thesis, right? So make the link back to the thesis, right? Whatever the argument is in the paragraph or paragraphs, link it back to the thesis somehow, preferably. I mean, maybe don't restate the thesis every single time, but like find a clever way of doing it. Link it back, otherwise they feel disconnected from the point of the essay, right? So here I've substituted those 3 arguments with my actual 3 arguments. Argument number 1, laws mean we're evil, training our children means we're evil, and the death toll of the 20th century means we're evil. And I told you a little bit about what I was going to argue here. This part can be a little bit challenging, right? Now, these paragraphs, minimum, need to be like 5 sentences long. It is true that you can write a good paragraph in less, if you're a good writer. Most of you aren't good writers. If that hurt your self-esteem, build some up, and then come back. I'll put a timestamp in the description right at this moment, get some self-esteem, come back, and continue listening. This is going to be a rough journey for all of us. I say, we need laws, therefore we're evil. I link it back to the thesis. I say that children need to be trained to be good. If you need to be trained to do something, that probably means that you aren't that thing. If you need to be trained to be good at hockey, it means you're not good at hockey, right? Like, that's just how it is. And finally, the death toll of the 20th century, I think it's something like over 250 million people died between the communist ideologies and the Nazi ideology. So, I mean, we can pretty fairly say that, you know, humans are evil. We kill each other over nothing. And I think there's an interesting point here, too, that I would probably mention. Like, often you'll hear that people say something like, religion is evil because look at all the people that were killed in the Crusades, or look at all the people that were killed or colonized in North America. Definitely true, right? Like, religion has been really bad in some cases. However, saying that religion is evil because people have killed in the name of religion is ridiculous, because people have killed in the name of everything. People in the Soviet Union killed in the name of atheism. Hundreds and thousands of priests were dragged out of their Orthodox churches and sent to the Gulag for being religious. So to say that it's the religions that are killing people, no, it's people, because guess what? People are evil. I believe it, and it's true. If you finish this video and you believe it too, I guess it was a good essay, right? So maybe this is like the most writing, but it's kind of like you kind of got it all figured out now, right? So it's kind of just like you're zooming through, getting all the things spread out. So try and make it, you know, try and make your arguments beefy. Once you're done that, you just got to conclude. Now, I got a trick for you that most English teachers would get mad at for saying, but I think there's some truth to it. You want a C- on your conclusion paragraph? Like, you want to just get this thing done, man? Just copy-paste your thesis paragraph. Like, that's how similar they are. The thesis and the conclusion are so similar that you can copy-paste them, so beginning and end, same paragraph, and you'd probably get a C-. Your teacher would probably be pissed at you, but it would probably work, because they're almost identical. So, step number 1 in writing a conclusion. Restate your thesis. What was this essay about again? Number 2, restate all of your main arguments. Remember, here's my thesis and here's why it's true. Number 3, discuss how you, or your essay, remember, don't use I. Now, I have a lecture on that I'll give to you later on, but, you know, not you, your essay or your arguments, have proved your thesis statement to be true. You've proved it, right? No one can argue with you. It's such a bloody good essay that people can't even possibly argue with you, right? Does it sound familiar? Well, it's these 3 things over again, except from a different perspective. What is that perspective? I'm glad you asked. So the introductory paragraph looks forward to your arguments. It says, here's what I'm gonna argue, here's another thing I'm gonna argue, here's another thing I'm gonna argue, and that will prove my thesis statement to be true. The way that your conclusion differs is it says, here's what I have argued, this. These are taking a long time. I should probably speed up the animation. And this. Here's what I have argued. Notice I'm talking in the past tense. As a result of these arguments, my essay is true. So the main difference is that the conclusion looks back at what you've said, whereas the introduction looks forward to what you're going to say. And that's reflected in the tenses you used. So usually in the introduction, you'll use the future tense or the conditional tense, and the conclusion will be in the past tense, something like that. So here's my conclusion statement. As proven above, the very nature of human beings is wicked and inherently evil. It requires laws to keep us in check, and we must indoctrinate our children with goodness from a very young age. If any further proof were needed, the death toll in the name of political ideology of the 20th century can remove all doubt. Human nature is corrupt and evil, and only through great effort can we overcome this nature. Not bad, right? Now you might think to yourself, hey Kozak, that's pretty good. I'ma copy-paste this stuff. Well, guess what? I'm going to put it all in the description, so when your teacher Googles it, because they know you didn't write it, because you're not a good writer, that's going to come up on YouTube page, and you're going to get roasted by your teacher for plagiarizing. You're going to fail, so don't do that. So, where's my thesis statement? There it is, at the beginning, like I said it was going to be. Where's my summary of arguments? Well, it's not a summary anymore, it's like a revision of my arguments. Those two words are the same, except one's forward, one's backward, one's future, one's past. And I've got a concluding sentence here, right? Now, note that I've added kind of like a little bit of food for thought here at the very end. I've restated my thesis again, so you could argue repetitive, and fair enough. But I've added a little bit of food for thought. Only through great effort can we overcome this nature. Because what I kind of want people to think about here is, if you believe humans are inherently good, and you teach people and you train people to believe that, there's like no impetus for you to try to be good. And if you don't try to be good, you end up evil. And worse, you end up believing that your evil is good. So I kind of leave this like final little thought here, hoping that intelligent people will pick it up and kind of be like, ooh, right? That's kind of the goal there. Sweet, man, you're done. You wrote the essay. Woo! Let's call it a day. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it kind of made sense to you. There's a lot of stuff I left out of here. This is like a really basic, really quick run through of a basic 5-paragraph essay you would write in like grade 9 or grade 10, or if you're in a private school, grade 1. So I hope it was useful to you guys. Hit me with some thumbs up or thumbs down. Let me know what you'd like to see. I'm going to start doing like a little grammar tutorial, like literally 1-minute videos on when to use certain grammar elements, stuff like that in the future. Look out for those. And as always, guys, I love you. I do this for you guys. I hope this video was helpful. Peace.